Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Human SOS Show. Glad to have you with us today and look forward to spending some time talking with you. As you can tell, Anton's not with me this morning. He is feeling a bit under the weather, so he is going to rest and take care of himself. And we wish him the best to get feeling better quickly. And want to introduce our topic today. The topic in itself is not especially a new one, but it is one that we're going to offer from a little bit different angle today. And the topic is setting goals. But what we want to do is talk about setting goals from the vantage point of 10% approach. 10% is something that we at Perspective Force talk about and an approach to bringing change. And since goal setting, especially this time of year, is related to change, usually what is called New Year's resolutions and so on. So, want to talk about how to approach setting goals, but from a different angle. And as you join today, I hope that you will let us know you're there. Let us know where you're joining from. And especially since Anton's not here today, it will make for a much better program if you engage, make comments, ask questions, and contribute to the discussion. So, goal setting has been around a long time, and there's a lot of information out about goal setting, things like SMART goals and other parameters on goal setting. And so we will talk about that some, but again, we want to think of it in terms of the 10% concept. And the idea behind 10% is related to making changes. And goals are generally about some kind of change, either projected activity or whatever, but it is about some kind of change. Welcome, Rick. Glad to see you as always. Thanks for being here. And so, goal setting is a key, but 10% means, in fact, it will be more of a factor in timing because the idea of 10%, to give you some background, is that when we want to make changes, quite often we will do something called turning over a new leaf at the beginning of the new year. And unfortunately, when we turn over new leaves, quite often the outcome is that we end up trying to change in things in a very big way, making radical changes as part of it. Let's see. Sharon is commenting that she's having trouble hearing me. If anyone else is having difficulty hearing me, let me know so that I can check my end to make sure there's nothing that I can do on my end. Otherwise, Sharon, I hope if it's not something on my end that you will be able to get it resolved. And then if I can help it, I will do so. Welcome, Lee. Glad to have you. Appreciate you joining us. So the idea of goal setting is that we are taking steps to define movement or define change in our lives. SMART goals talk about being able to, they're attainable and that they're accountable and that you have timings on them and that they are well defined and so on. And that's very important as we talk about goals. But again, it's about timing because if you do this well, you're going to have short-term goals, long-term goals, even mid-term goals. And what we want to focus in on is making sure that we have short-term goals that are attainable and realistic, and that we're not trying to make massive changes in our lives. Because for most of us, we go on New Year's and we set these new goals, and they set them, and sometimes very aggressive goals, and lose 100 pounds, or make $1 million in the first quarter, or whatever. And I believe statistically, the majority of people that have New Year's goals or set New Year's resolutions, majority of them have already failed within days, even hours sometimes, of starting them. And I believe it's because we first may not understand goal setting to the fullest. And second of all, we're setting goals that are not realistic and that are trying to make large changes in multiple areas of our lives. And that's just not practical for most of us. The example that I always like to talk about is the example of dieting. Most diets, you start off and you make these massive changes in your habits, or you try to. And that includes cutting out something or adding something in, or may involve some kind of fasting approach. But these changes are just remarkably huge. And most of us can't sustain that. Many of us will get through that initial phase or get going along, but ultimately we can't sustain it. And of course, as you know, we're the Human SOS show, which human is about human sustainable operating system. So that our goal is about sustainability, and your goal setting should be about doing something sustainably. So we want to just break that down and see. So what I suggest is that as you approach goal setting, especially in the new year, and all, that we look at 10% approach. And that usually is going to be best if we look at a single area of change. And so as we think about the goals and how we're going to approach them, consider, can we make a 10% change and be more effective in meeting that, rather than setting these lofty goals and failing within hours or days or weeks of starting. And so we want to think about sustainability in the goals. And what I also suggest, and I even offer as maybe a good 10% start for many of us, is to consider looking out and finding our vision, mission, and values. Because many of us are operating without having those as a core guide to what we do. And if we establish vision, mission, values in our lives, and it will cause us to then set sustainable goals, because they're based on our priority as a person. They fit who we are. Glad to hear it, Sharon, that you got your sound working, and I appreciate you letting me know. So again, look at vision, mission, values, and try to understand it. And by the way, part of what you want to consider as you set or look at vision, mission, values, is that not only can you get it in your head and understand it, but can you express it to others? because as you can express that to others, it becomes more real, and therefore it we will be able to sustain it, and then it will be a natural outflow of who we are. Welcome, Renee. Glad to have you with us today. So just consider that as a backdrop to how we move forward with goals and goal setting. So let's see here. Well, and Renee has a comment. She says, agreed, Kevin. Vision, mission, and values need to be front and center to help be our GPS for our goals. Indeed, when we can get that at the forefront, then, and it guides all of our choices and sets our priorities, then our goals are much more likely to be attainable and sustainable. And so we want to really have the right driving force as we set up goals. And I won't go into it in depth because it's would take way too long. But as we set up our vision, mission, values, you can then begin to look at strategic priorities and strategic planning, and there are whole processes for that. So just use that as a background, and remember, don't try to change everything at one time, and don't try to change it in making giant leaps, but rather making small steps along the way. That's so important. So just again, the backdrop on goal setting. And as far as goal setting goes, there's a lot of different guidance out there, and share a few of those things with you. First of all, it is a good idea as you approach goal setting to write them down. Many of us will get goals in our head and think, okay, well, this is a good direction. And what happens is the things that we decide become a little muddy and murky as time goes on and as life hits us and so on. So writing down goals is of great value, or recording them. Now, also bear in mind that when we're doing this, that you need to do it in such a way that it's manageable. See, if I were to write down my goals on a piece of paper, I would probably end up losing the piece of paper or getting it shuffled in with something else. So for me, I know that when I record my goals, I will record it digitally because that's the way I function. So as you look at this, consider that how you function, because ultimately part of goal setting is to manage those goals, and that becomes very important. So writing down goals is a key part, because we have a record of what we're after, what we're trying to do. And then also a part of effective goal setting is to have time frames. Don't just say, well, in 2023, I will lose weight. That's not a good goal. That's not an effective goal. And it also takes out the concept of 10%, because part of 10% is considering the steps we take and to consider them in such a way that it's not so massive and disruptive in our lives that it's not sustainable. So writing down goals and then having time frames for them. And as you approach it, make sure that your goals are realistic and attainable, because if they're not, you're going to fail. The example I mentioned earlier was making $1 million in the first quarter of this year. Is it possible? Sure. There are some ways that could happen. Inheritance, maybe. Win the lottery. Invent some product that goes wild on the market. Have a generous benefactor. I don't know. Is it possible? Yes. Is it practical? Not really. Is it attainable? small possibility, but the probability is low. Welcome, Lydia. Glad to have you as always. So make sure that as you look at goals, that you make sure they're attainable. And the other thing that we need to do is to track our goals. And for some of us, it's going to be approaching checking things off on a daily basis. For example, if your goal for 2023 is to uh, have weight loss, well, some people will want to check on a regular basis how their weight is looking and record it to look for patterns. But for other people, if you do that, you're going to get frustrated and discouraged because the um, because you don't see the progress as quickly as you want to see it. So again, even that is back to the idea of 10% process. Welcome, Professor Jagdish. Glad to have you with us. Lee asked a question: why not have an extremely wild goal? He says he does, and I get that. In fact, there is an acronym that's been around for a while, the BHAG, BHAG, Big Hairy Audacious Goal, and you can have big wild goals. The key becomes timing. Many of us want to set these goals and have 90 days or 6 months to accomplish them. And quite often they aren't realistically attainable in that time frame. What I suggest, and we mentioned this earlier, is that we start this process with the biggest, wildest goal, if you will, and that's our vision. And our vision is very big and wild. And if it's not going to be much of a vision. And so we really need to consider maybe the first wild goal that we need to look at is figuring out what our vision is, our lifelong vision, which will be, if it's done well, will be much bigger than ourselves, to a point that others will have to be engaged to see it happen. And so, yeah, big wild goals are great. But it becomes a clear understanding of how to approach it timing wise, and to consider if are we trying to make this massive change all at once. And most people will not be successful with that approach. And so that's I'm not saying not have big goals. In fact, the ultimate big goal, if you will, is our vision for life, and that should drive everything else. And as Lydia comments, setting goals according to our God-given purpose. One of the foundations that we need to have, and this is about life, period, but it factors into this conversation of goals, is understanding your design and passion and purpose. And because each of us have a design, and we need to understand and find it so that we can operate within with congruence with that. Secondly, we have a purpose, and we should find out what that is, and it's based in our design. And for example, and I've shared this before, one of my purposes in life is not to become a singer. And that's not because I don't want to or wouldn't like to or have that desire. It is because I have recognized that that is not part of my design. And so if it's not part of my design to try to have a purpose of becoming a singer, is not making a good choice with the right priority. Welcome, Dilip. Glad to have you with us. I apologize. I see the text that you have recorded, and I appreciate it, but I don't understand the language. So if you can translate it, that would be great. Welcome, Dr. Sharma. So glad to have you with us today. I appreciate your presence. For those of you who don't know, Dr. Sharma and I work together very closely with the International Institute of Influencers, and we have been, in fact, in the process of setting goals for III, and we'll be rolling those out here in a few days. So welcome, Dr. Sharma. So goal setting is about being attainable, and as Lee pointed out, having wild goals, or as the acronym BHAG, Big Hairy Audacious Goals, is not a problem as long as we understand about timing and about establishing realistic approaches. And especially if it's about any kind of big changes in our life, I suggest that we prioritize, that we find the one that's something that we know that we need to change, and focus in on one thing and set a goal of 10% initially. And let's see, Professor Jagdish has a comment. Goals must be followed by plans of actions down to the minutest details. Indeed, effective goals have to have action. And writing conceptual goals of I want to feel better or be healthier, or those are not effective goals. They're concepts and ideas, and that's fine. But you've got to write down as part of your goal what are specific actions that you will take to move forward with that goal. And it's a big challenge. And I would even offer that there are people that are not especially naturally goal driven, and to try to set up or plan effective goals and do many of them would be a great struggle for those people. That's why it may be worthy of considering starting out with a single small step goal in an area that we need to make a change in. So we've talked about goals need to be written down. They need to be attainable and realistic. Okay. They need to have time attached, and they also need to have specific actions that will lead to accomplishing those goals. With a backdrop of all of this is that our biggest, wildest goal, if you will, is our vision for life, because that will drive all the others. And if that's not the place where we set our priorities, then we're going to find ourselves conflicted, because what will happen is without that, we will let others set our goals and agendas for us because we lack our own direction. And so make sure to set the priority first by understanding your design, your purpose, and then have the passion to support it. That, by the way, that passion is an indicator, not a tell-all, but an indicator of what our design and purpose are. And then once we establish and understand design and purpose and passion in our lives, then the second step is to set I apologize, I was distracted trying to keep up with the questions, is to develop our vision, mission, and values based on our design, purpose, and passion. And if we look at doing this, we have a greater chance of achieving goals in what we set, and because then we're operating in a congruent fashion with who we are, rather than trying to make goals based on the world's standard of success or culture's standard of success, and get misaligned with who we are, because it doesn't fit and it doesn't flow. Let's see here. Lee has another comment. Biggest, wildest goal, question mark. My goal is the ultimate political Hail Mary. For those of you that haven't followed Lee closely, Lee is actually in pursuit of becoming president of the U.S., and he is going about it in a unique fashion, and it is a wild goal, no doubt. But if that's the vision based on design, purpose, and passion that you have, Lee, then go for it. I would suggest that from a vision standpoint, that you consider that there is a much bigger vision for than even, I know reaching status as a president of the United States is quite a goal, but I don't think it's a big enough vision in terms of vision. But Godspeed with that. We certainly need people that are willing to step up and change the political landscape, and have people get in there with values and vision, because I'm concerned that many do not. So we talked about understanding design, purpose, and passion in our lives to then set set up our vision, mission, and values. And then from there, we begin to set up goals based on that backdrop or foundation. And as we've talked about, goals that we set need to be attainable and realistic, and we need to be sure to have specific time frames and steps as part of those goals. And one of the things, as we consider our time frames as part of this, is to approach it from the 10% method. And that is, find something that is high priority for us to change and focus in, and initially in the shorter term, look to accomplish 10%. And Anton talks all the time about the statistics related to if you set a big, really big goal and you're only getting 20% success rate, how it will fail, and versus setting smaller steps and then attaining those, then you have a higher success rate, and which those successes help build on themselves to help us really go about change. So goal setting with a little bit different background based on our priorities, our design, our vision, and to set the timing as such that it's on pace to accomplish 10% change. And when we do that, then we have successes in our goals, and they will feed on themselves to go forward. And then another technical aspect of the goals is set goals that are short-term, mid-term, and long-term. For example, if a popular goal for everyone in the new year is to lose weight, and so one initial goal there might be to just say, the first week of the year, I'm going to eat a more nutritious diet 2 out of the first 7 days of the year. And by doing that, that's kind of the 10% approach. And we have set an attainable goal of being able to eat nutritiously for 2 days out of the 7 of the first week of the new year. So it's attainable, it's realistic, it has time attached to it, and specific actions to go with it. So again, to give you a concept of setting goals that you can accomplish. And when we approach it this way, we have a greater likelihood of being successful and therefore it being sustainable. And as we began to develop these goals based on, again, the backdrop of design and passion and purpose, with a vision, mission, and values that are congruent, then the changes become more natural because they are part of who we are. Quite often, the challenge with goals is we're setting goals that don't align with us as a person. They don't align with who we are. And to put it in other terms, we set goals quite often based on our weaknesses and trying to overcome weaknesses. What I suggest is, rather than focusing on overcoming weaknesses, which sometimes we need to grow in that regard, so I'm not discounting that, but as we set goals, focus on growing our strengths, because we have a greater likelihood of being able to attain them, because we are then planning based on our strengths and not our weaknesses. And so a lot of what it's going to take to make effective goals, if you haven't pieced it together, is going to be self-awareness, or what I'd like to suggest, intentional living. So often we are going through life on autopilot. We assume that we are about making money to buy food and needs and move forward based on that. But quite often we haven't considered how we go about making that money to buy our food to live. We just grab whatever is available or whatever is culturally popular, or sometimes based strictly just on, well, that option pays the most money. So we need to back up and spend time in self-awareness and find out the foundational questions of what is our design, our purpose, and our passion, and have we come to understand and establish our vision and mission and values based on who we are, rather than cultural influences, societal pressures. So much of now success is defined as having all kinds of money, for example, and nothing wrong with money, nothing wrong with having that as part of goals, but you've got to understand having money helps in certain situations, but is not the answer for any of us. And so, again, intentional living, thoughtful consideration, self-awareness is a key. In fact, for some of us, as we approach the new year, our goal may be that we need to plan to understand ourselves, because we really don't understand ourselves. We're operating under other people's vision and mission and values and trying to be like them when we're not. We're different. In fact, you can, without any reservation, count on the idea that you cannot be like somebody else because we are each unique. We can learn some of their behaviors. Hopefully, more importantly, we focus in on what principles drive their life and then begin to see how those principles fit into who we are and what our life is about. So, just to recap, as we approach goals, we need the backdrop of understanding our design, our purpose, and our passion, and then have a clear set vision, mission, and values based off of that. And then begin to set goals to move forward in a way that is congruent with our who we are, and to put it short, and then consider the 10% approach. And that is not trying to make a massive change in our life that is not realistic, it's not practical to attain it, not in the time frames that we set for it. So it's all part of a bigger view that we need to get. And so as we set the goals, then we write them down, we record them one way or another, whether it's digitally or paper and pencil. And then we consider, is it attainable? Is it realistic? And then what time frame we're going to accomplish it, and then what actions it's going to take to move forward in achieving those goals. And then, as Lee has brought to the forefront, having big, wild goals. One thing, though, that is key is that when we think about big, wild goals, they should be based in a lifetime view, not in a short-term view, because achieving big things is fine. But if we try to achieve them too early, and that becomes we make that our vision, and then when we get there and we look around and maybe we attain it, but at that point, a lot of people have gotten there and they go, well, I'm here, now what? And realize that life goes on, and that hopefully their life has a greater purpose than whatever that goal was. And quite often that it's around money. If you talk to people that are out there that have reached the epitome of success, they've gotten status, they've gotten money, and should be happy as can be. Well, a lot of these folks we have seen commit suicide because they get there and find that that's not fulfillment of life. That's not what life is about. And by the way, part of goal setting is planning the steps to move forward with life to fulfill who we are and what is our purpose. And so the alignment in all of these areas, congruence becomes important. As you consider setting goals, ask yourself the question, are these goals congruent with who I am and what I am here for? Is it going to help be a part of what I need to accomplish as part of my life? And if it's not, good morning, Karen. Glad to have you with us. Thanks for joining. If we're not aligned in our goals with those other things, what do you think the likelihood is that you're going to accomplish the goals, complete the goals? At that point, if they're not congruent with who we are, the realistic aspect of the goal goes out the window. Because if, again, I go back to my example, that if I set this goal that it is to become a a singer that travels around and entertains people and maybe records. I don't, because I don't think about that. I can't define it clearly. But the point is, for me to make it a goal to become a singer is not very realistic, because it's not a part of who I am designed to be. And it doesn't make me any less or worse that I can't do that. It just means that I have other goals, I have other contributions and value to bring to myself and the world that are in different ways. So, again, getting this backdrop becomes important. And then to be able to sustain the goals that we set are more congruent with us, and therefore it is more likely that we will be successful in achieving those goals. So as we look out, if nothing else, as you consider setting goals, be very, very intentional, and be very intentional in living and self-aware to the point that we really understand how we can live. And then as part of goal setting, how do I know if I'm making progress? And different people are different, need different approaches. Again, using the goal of weight loss, some people will want to or need to weigh on the scales every day, because they need to check off, and when they have days where there's no change, they're not going to get discouraged and quit. Whereas other people don't need to, and it would actually work against them to weigh in every day. They're better off to say, okay, I will weigh myself every week or every other day or once a month or whatever. But understanding what drives us and understanding how to maintain and track our steps towards our goals becomes really important. And another thing about goals is they are based on actions, and be sure that your actions that you choose are also realistic. Not only do you as a person have what it takes, but do you have the necessary knowledge, necessary equipment, and so on for those goals? And so as we approach these goals, consider a lot more than just getting something down on paper that sounds good, that if we happen to be successful, it'd be really nice. What we want is, as we set goals, to set goals that we can be successful in, which, by the way, generally speaking, a goal by its very nature is going to bring about change. It may be small changes. It may be changes in terms of degree or volume of accomplishment. But all of this is important. And it is important to have goals in our lives, because that's part of moving forward towards achieving what we're here for. Why, our why in life. As we set goals, if we set a goal to have $1 million in the first quarter of the year, ask yourself, why? Is it just to say you got $1 million? Is it that somehow it's going to make everything better? And if those are the kind of motivators, then your goal is doomed to failure. Whereas if, for example, we want to get $1 million in the first quarter, but our purpose is in providing material support for orphanages around the world, then we have getting this $1 million has a purpose other than just attaining the $1 million. The purpose is to use that material wealth to help orphanages around the world. And so you see how it ties back to our design and our purpose and our passion, and the way that we set up the direction for that is through vision, mission, and values. Once we've established those and then we set goals well, then we have a much greater chance of success. Plus, we want to approach them from a timing standpoint from the concept of 10%. That's about our timing. If we can set a goal that helps us towards 10% of our big goal or whatever, and start moving in that direction, that 10% change will help us that approach will help us to be more successful on a sustainable level. We can all make dramatic changes for a period of time, but most of the time, not all the time, there are some people of necessity that have to make dramatic changes because otherwise their life's at risk, or the damage to others is great, or whatever. But most of the time, we don't need to have that kind of change in that kind of time frame. We need to have change, but we need to approach it in a fashion that it is more realistic and it's based on a 10% change rather than trying to change 100% all at once. So I hope this gives you a backdrop and some ideas on effective goal setting, especially in the new year, and help you to drive forward with it. And so unless we have questions or comments for the good of the group, I think I have covered what I think is essential in goal setting from a 10% approach. If Anton were here, I know he would have had more to add to it because of his unique perspective, which is good. That's the value of why there are two of us on this. So if any of you have already set goals for this year, or this upcoming year, and what have you done in the past to be successful with goal setting? I'd love to hear that from you, because I know that others here in the audience could benefit from your experience, gain insight and wisdom from your experience without having to learn it the hard way. So any comments in that regard would be great. And then again, asking questions. I don't mind addressing the questions. And I will be very frank with you. I don't have all the answers to all the questions, but I certainly give it a shot. Plus, with the others here, the likelihood is that someone will be able to at least offer a good answer. Well, I don't see anyone jumping in with any questions or comments pertinent. So it tells me that on some level, we've covered what you were hoping to get out of today. And I hope that as we go forward in the new year, that you will look at effective goal setting, but approach it from in a sustainable way, and do so congruent with who we are. So thanks everyone for being here today. We again send out our wishes for a speedy recovery for Anton, as he was not feeling well this morning. For those of you that weren't here earlier, I'll let you know he's all right, just under the weather a bit. And so thank you everyone. Pray that this new year that you are blessed and that you are able to do effective goal setting to bring about change in your life that will match up with who you are and what you need to be about. So thank you, everyone. Take care. God bless, and Happy New Year. Look forward to seeing everybody in 2023. Take care. Bye now.